Huffington Post Black Voices has a good article. Also, NBCnews.com has one. But this study talks about the adultification of African American girls, the adultification of African American girls, and how this leads to harsher disciplinary treatment, researchers found. Now, this was a study that was done by Georgetown Law's Center on Poverty and Inequality. Georgetown Law's Center on Poverty and Inequality. The name of the study is called Girlhood Interrupted. Girlhood Interrupted, the erasure of Black girls' childhood. Okay, the erasure of Black girls' childhood. Now, a new report found that adults view young African American girls as less innocent and more adult-like than white girls starting as young as age 5. Okay. And what they found in this study is that the report shows that adults believe that African American girls seem older than white girls of the same age. And they think that African American girls need less nurturing, need less protection, need to be supported less, need to be comforted less. They believe that African American girls are more independent, know more about adult topics, and also they believe that African American girls know more about sex. Now, a lot of this, if not all of it, comes from stereotypes of African American women that are fed to us through the media. Okay. And this is where a lot of this comes from. So these are images fed to us through the media. We see the hypersexualization of African American women, or the over-sexualization of African American women. We see it in a lot of hip hop music videos. We hear it in negative hip hop. We see these images in movies. A lot of this is historical, going back hundreds of years, going into slavery, the dehumanization of African American women, the commodification of their sexuality, etc. Okay, so a lot of this is historical. If we go back and look at Sarah Bartman or Sartre J, who I think it was in the 1700s, she was paraded around Europe as a display, and she was Khoisan, right, from Southern Africa, and she was basically a looked at as a sideshow attraction because of her large breasts, her large buttocks, and her large genitalia. Okay, so if you go and look through history, you'll see the over-sexualization of African American women. You'll see the dehumanization of them, and you'll see a lot of these stereotypes. You look at the sapphire character that we see, one of the stereotypes of African American women as a sapphire, over-sexualized and loud and sassy, different things like this, right? And you'll see this throughout movies. You'll see this throughout media. Okay, so, and this is what this study is documenting, but then it shows the negative impact of these images and how it affects the way adults treat African American girls oftentimes, especially in school. Okay, so this is why this type of information is extremely important. Okay, so now the report built on information from a 2014 study that you've heard me talk about numerous times in the past. The 2014 study was done by Dr. Philip Atiba Goff. Okay, and this is at the American Psychological Association's website also. But the study in 2014 found that African American boys are more likely to be viewed as older and suspected of crimes starting at age 10. And this was the first study of its kind to focus on girls. Okay, so if we look at the study from 2014 by Dr. Philip Atiba Goff. Okay, and I've talked about it before, and also on MSNBC when Melissa Harris Perry used to have her show on MSNBC. She interviewed Dr. Philip Atiba Goff about this study. Okay, the Melissa Harris Perry show on MSNBC, when she used to have her show, she dealt with this also. Okay, All right. And I'm going to post this link here if you want to register for our online course that I teach. Is a 12-hour, 6-week online course. Normally meets on Fridays. We're going to do a special session on Saturday, July 1st, 2017, 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. All the sessions are recorded. You can go back and watch it over and over again also, okay? And we'll do a preview of it here shortly. We'll do a preview of the course here shortly also. Okay, so if we look at this study from 2014, there's an article at the American Psychological Association's website called Black Boys Viewed as Older, Less Innocent Than Whites, Research Finds. Black Boys Viewed as Older, Less Innocent Than Whites, Research Finds. And it talks about how Black boys as young as 10 years old may not be viewed in the same light of childhood innocence as their white peers, but are instead more likely to be mistaken as older, be perceived as being guilty, and face police violence if accused of a crime, according to new research published by the American Psychological Association. So if we go back and look at Tamir Rice, shot and killed by Officer Timothy Loman within about 1.8 seconds of the police car pulling up. Police car hadn't even stopped moving. It hadn't even come to a complete stop before he opened fire on Tamir Rice, right? So when the prosecutor McGinty gave his decision not to press charges against Officer Timothy Loman for the cold-blooded execution of Tamir Rice, he said that Tamir Rice appeared to be older than he actually was. He was 12 years old. He appeared to be older. He appeared to be about 20 years old. Okay. And when you have situations like this, oftentimes because of stereotypes, African-American children, boys and girls, are perceived as being older than they are, and innocent mistakes that they make or that white children will make that'll just be brushed off as part of being a child, African-American children are held to a much higher standard and penalized much more often for these same things, for these same mistakes. This is all psychological, based upon images fed to us over and over and over again, thousands of times over the course of years. So researchers, so if we go back to the article and the study dealing with African-American girls, researchers surveyed 325 adults from racial and ethnic backgrounds in a ratio that mirrors the country's population. So they dealt with a cross-section of the country. Many of the adults surveyed had a high school diploma or higher as far as education, high school diploma or higher as far as education. They found the biggest differences in the ways adults view children in the age brackets of 5 years old to 9 years old and 10 years old to 14 years old. Okay. They found the biggest differences in the ways adults view children in the age brackets of 5 years old to 9 years old and 10 years old to 14 years old. These differences continued to a lesser degree in the age brackets of 15 years old to 19 years old. Okay. Now, Rebecca Epstein is the lead author on this study. She's the executive director for the center, Georgetown Law's Center on Poverty and Inequality. Okay. The co-author of the study is Jamelia J. Blake. Jamelia J. Blake. And Jamelia J. Blake is an associate professor at Texas A&M University. So they broke down the relationship between adultification, the relationship that adultification has on the ways African-American girls are disciplined during a press conference call on Tuesday. Okay. And if we look at the article from NBC News, the article from NBC News is called "The Adultification of Black Girls, Less Protection, More Discipline." Less protection, more discipline. If we look at a study that I talked about when it came out back in May, TheRoot.com has an article from May 11th, 2017. Black girls 5 times more likely to be suspended from school than white girls. Black girls 5 times more likely to be suspended from school than white girls. And it talks about the study from the National Women's Law Center that found that African American girls are twice as likely as any other student to be suspended from school, and 5.5 times more likely to be suspended than their white counterparts. And they looked at, let me see, and the name of this study is called Stopping School Pushout for Girls of Color. Stopping School Pushout for Girls of Color. And they talk about how the mistreatment of African American girls in school based upon stereotypes oftentimes leads to them being pushed out of school, not dropping out voluntarily, but actually being pushed out of school. And then also there's a correlation between dropping out of school, dropping out of high school, for instance, and having a shorter life expectancy and being more prone to going to prison as well. There's studies dealing with this also. Now, this particular report, Stopping School Pushout for Girls of Color, in this report, they talk about how stereotypes of African American girls and women as angry or aggressive and promiscuous or hypersexualized can shape school officials' views of African American girls in critically harmful ways, whether they're talking about teachers, principals, assistant principals, administrators, etc. And these are based upon stereotypes and based upon negative images fed to us through the television. Stereotypes of African American girls and women as being angry or aggressive and being promiscuous or hypersexualized can shape school officials' views of African American girls in critically harmful ways. So if you look at the negative stereotypical images that we see on Love and Hip Hop, or Basketball Wives, or Real Housewives of Atlanta, or any of these other reality shows, or for that matter, the TV show Empire, which the TV show Empire has more viewers than any of these reality shows. They have between about 13 to 17 million viewers each week. Okay, that's more than any of these reality shows. All right, so we have to really understand, and I've been studying media for 25 years, so we really have to understand the impact that media has on the way people think, feel, act, and behave. Your thoughts create feelings. Your feelings create actions and behaviors. Your actions and behaviors create results. Your thoughts create feelings. Your feelings create actions and behaviors. Your actions and behaviors create results. So your thoughts are influenced by everything you read, see, and hear. Your thoughts are influenced by everything you read, see, and hear. What you read, see, and hear affects the way you think, feel, act, and behave. So there was a reason why you have negative stereotypes of African Americans created, especially during slavery, when you have like the minstrel shows created around 1828 by T.D. Rice, Thomas Dartmouth Rice, Thomas Daddy Rice, who was a entertainer, right? He was also known as an Ethiopian delineator, right? But he's like a vaudeville performer, so to speak. And he creates this Jim Crow character that is lampooning and making fun of, is like a caricature of an African-American man. And he puts on tattered, torn clothing. He adopts a Southern dialect, puts on blackface, and he does his Jim Crow character, and white people love it. And then you start having all these other white men to do the same thing, put on blackface, put on tattered, torn clothing, etc., and do this. And this is the birth of the minstrel shows. This is the birth of the minstrel shows. The minstrel shows go back to about 1828, 1829, and T.D. Rice was known as the father of the minstrel shows. Well, what they were doing was dehumanizing African Americans, and you see these you'll see these in newspaper articles, newspaper ads, cartoons, books, and the minstrel shows become the most popular form of entertainment or at least one of the most popular forms of entertainment in the country, the minstrel shows, right? And if you go to the 1920s, you have the most popular radio show in the 1920s is going to be Amos and Andy. So Amos and Andy was created in the 1920s by two white men, Freeman Gosling and Charles Correll, who adopt a Southern dialect, imitate African Americans. These are stereotypical images of African Americans. These are not very smart, brilliant caricatures of them. No, they're showing them as being dim-witted, ignorant, things like this. Sometimes they're going to perform in blackface. And Amos and Andy becomes the most popular radio show in the country. Amos, I mean, I'm an old radio show fan, so I've listened to thousands of episodes of old radio shows. Everything from Dragnet to Gunsmoke to the Lone Ranger to the Green Hornet to Fibber, Mickey and Molly to the Great Gildersleeve to George Burns and Gracie Allen to the Life of Riley to X-1. You name it. I've heard all of them. Jimmy Stewart as the six shooter. Have Gun Will Travel. Boston Blackie. Philip Marlowe, Private Detective. Listen to all of them. Okay. But Amos and Andy becomes the most popular radio show in the country and is based upon lampooning and dehumanizing African Americans. So we have to understand how the dehumanization of African Americans has always been entertainment for this country. The dehumanization of African Americans has always been entertainment in this country. Negative hip hop is a continuation of that. Negative, all hip hop is not bad, but negative, just commercialized negative hip hop, okay, that is a continuation of that. Okay, so Rebecca Epstein, so Jamelia Blake, the co-author of the study on African American girls and dealing with the adultification of African American girls, right? She said, quote, one reason this might be occurring is because African American girls are being held to the same stereotypes we have of African American women. African American girls are being held to the same stereotypes of African American women. Black women have historically and currently been seen as being aggressive, loud, defiant, and over-sexualized. Aggressive, loud, defiant, and over-sexualized. And I believe, along with many other researchers, that the stereotypes of African American women are being mapped onto African American girls. So the same stereotypes of African American women being loud, aggressive, defiant, over-sexualized, hypersexualized, etc. Okay, these are being projected onto African American girls, and they're being put into these categories, held to these standards as well, which negatively impacts oftentimes how adults act towards African American girls, especially in schools. So the report stated that potential implications for the findings could be research exploring how these perceptions of African American girls affect how they are disciplined at school and beyond. How they are disciplined at school and beyond. Black girls are 5 times more likely to be suspended from school as white girls are, and twice as likely to be suspended from school as white boys, according to research used in this study. And though they make up less than 16% of the female school population, African American girls account for 28% of referrals to law enforcement and 37% of arrests. Although they make up less than 16% of the female school population, African American girls account for 28% of referrals to law enforcement and 37% of arrests. Now, African American girls are also almost 3 times more likely than white girls to be referred to the juvenile justice system and 20% more likely to be charged with a crime. Almost 3 times more likely than white girls to be referred to the juvenile justice system and 20% more likely to be charged with a crime. How's everybody doing on Facebook? Share this broadcast on your own Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in also. We're going to do a quick overview of my online course that I teach. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. I'm doing a session of that class on Saturday, July 1st, 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay, that's a 12-hour, 6-week online course. Normally meets on Friday, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All the sessions are recorded. You can go back and watch it over and over again. Okay, so if you need me to post the link again so you can register for that course, I'll do that. Vivian, To-Share, Denise, how y'all doing? Anthony, how y'all doing this evening? Okay, so now Rebecca Epstein, who was the lead author of the study, she said, quote, the consequences of entering the juvenile justice system cannot be ignored. The consequences of entering the juvenile justice system cannot be ignored. As we know, it can change the course of a girl's life. But despite these startling statistics, there's precious little research about why this different treatment happens. There's very little research on why this different treatment happens. Why are African-American girls subjected to more discipline and greater contact with the juvenile justice system? And at the center, we wanted to look at those possible root causes. Now, she goes on to say that during their research, she recalled talking to a young African-American girl who said that her teacher told her, quote, you're just like an angry black woman. You're just like an angry black woman, quote unquote. Now, oftentimes we have to understand that African-American girls, they could have experienced molestation, which can oftentimes impact their behavior. Also, there could be a cry for help because of issues that they're dealing with at home. But to take a stereotype of an angry black woman and to apply that to the African-American girl, which could then change the way that you would act towards them and treat them. Because when you look at the study from that the root.com talks about, that came out back in May from the National Women's Law Center. Okay. Name of this study is called Stopping School Push Out for Girls of Color. Stopping School Push Out for Girls of Color. Right. And they talk about how when white girls are assertive, that is not looked at as being something negative. When African-American girls are assertive, it's a problem. Okay. They talk about how black girls are punished for challenging what society deems as feminine behavior, like being candid or talking back. Implicit and explicit biases about black children's behavior and capacity to learn. You're dealing with these types of stereotypes. Black students are more likely to attend under-resourced schools also. And with under-resourced schools, they have less professionals to possibly deal with children who may be dealing with certain issues, emotional issues, etc. Assertiveness, while an asset in males, is often suppressed in African-American girls at school. They talk about this in the study on stopping school push out for girls of color. Assertiveness, while an asset in males, is often suppressed in African-American girls at school. Ironically, the quality of assertiveness generally has led to positive public perceptions of black women in leadership roles. In fact, the Let Her Learn survey found that African-American girls were more likely than any other group of girls to see themselves as leaders. However, in the school setting, in school, assertiveness can often be misidentified as talking back or defiance, which puts African American girls at a greater risk for inequitable discipline. In the school setting, assertiveness can often be misidentified as talking back or defiance, which puts African American girls at a greater risk for inequitable discipline. The report highlights how the underfunding of African American schools manifests itself in how girls of color are educated. The study's data show that as the percentage of African American student population rises at schools across the country, schools statistically hire fewer counselors per student and bring in more law enforcement officers per student. The report highlights how the underfunding of African American schools manifests itself in how girls of color are educated. And the study also shows that as the percentage of African American student population rises at schools across the country, schools statistically hire fewer counselors per student, and they bring in more law enforcement officers per student. But this is only for African American children. So check out the article also from theroot.com. Black girls 5 times more likely to be suspended from school than white girls. Black girls 5 times more likely to be suspended from school than white girls. Okay. All right. Now, so I have a bunch of studies dealing with this, right? Dealing with African American girls in school, etc. That was just one of the recent ones from May. Okay, so Jamelia Blake, back to the article in the most recent study. This article from Huffington Post, Black Voices. Black girls are viewed as less innocent than white girls starting at age 5. So Jamelia Blake, who's the co-author of the study, said these attitudes take away from African American girls having a childhood. These attitudes take away from African American girls having a childhood. She said, quote, "There's kind of this social stereotype. And of course, there's something about being resilient, being independent. But when this stereotype is put on African American girls at a very young age, it really robs them, whether they realize it or not, of this kind of naivete of being a child. The stereotypes of being resilient and being independent, when this is put on African American girls at a young age, it can really rob them. It really robs them of the naivete of being a child. Now, the author said they hope that researchers and teachers examine the casual connection between adultification and harsh treatment, and that policymakers make concerted efforts to counteract the bias. Now, Rebecca Epstein, the lead on this study, Rebecca Epstein from Georgetown Law's Center on Poverty and Inequality, she said that the Law Center is doing its part by creating an initiative on gender justice and opportunity later in 2017. In all future related efforts, she said it's essential to center those affected the most. Now, she goes on to say, in all of this work, voices of Black girls themselves should be front and center to the work. We encourage Black girls to raise their voices about this issue, and of course, for adults to listen to them. All Black girls are entitled to and deserve equal treatment, including equal access to the protections that are appropriate for children, including equal access to the protections that are appropriate for children. So check out this article from Huffington Post, Black Voices. Black girls are viewed as less innocent than white girls starting at age 5. And this deals with the adultification of African-American girls and how it leads to harsher disciplinary treatment. Okay. And the article from NBCnews.com from June 28th, 2017 is called The Adultification of Black Girls. Less protection, more discipline. Less protection, more discipline. Adults think that Black girls are less innocent, less in need of protection and nurturing, and seem older than similarly aged white girls, which could lead to stiffer punishments in school, a new report says on Tuesday. Okay, so check this out also. All right, go to some of your comments here quickly. Anthony said we're human beings, but Black women are the origin of human life. Brian said U.S. Senator Kamala D. Harris is in the category you speak of being so aggressive, makes a white man nervous. Kamala Harris was the former Attorney General of the state of California. She's a former prosecutor. Okay, all the other white men could be aggressive. When it came to her, she got interrupted. She basically got reprimanded. She got interrupted because she scared the hell out of Attorney General Jeff Sessions because he knows he's wrong and he's a liar. He knows he's wrong. He's a liar, but he's also a Klan sympathizer and he's a segregationist from Alabama. This is who Jeff Sessions is. Okay. Let me scroll back, look at some of your other comments. We're going to do a brief overview of my online course, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. So let's see here. Okay, Eddie, Diana said Black people need to start embracing the assertiveness and tenacity of our Black girls. Black people are embarrassed by our girls' initial confidence and strength, then start beating it out of them. Okay, Jerry's listening from Ohio. Shalonda said because they want us to be subservient. She said it's to destroy their souls. Okay. All right. So everybody share this broadcast on your own Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in also. All right. Okay. So we're going to do a special session of the online course that I teach, Ancient Kemet. One of the online courses I teach, not the only one. What's the main one? Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We'll do that Saturday, July 1st, 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right. So when we deal with the transatlantic slave trade, we have to understand that it is the culmination of a sequence of historical events. Historical events don't happen in a vacuum, right? You have to deal with a chronology of historical events and how they lead up to a number of different events taking place. Okay, how a sequence of historical events lead up to a larger event taking place. So you can look at the transatlantic slave trade episodically as an episode in history, which is not historically accurate, or you can look at it chronologically. Okay, so what we deal with it chronologically, and we deal with thousands of years of history that lead up to the transatlantic slave trade happening also. Okay, we deal with thousands of years of history leading up to the transatlantic slave trade happening. And it's important for people to understand that African people, you know, we've been in this land we call the United States of America at least 51,700 years. At least 51,700 years. The Khoisan have the oldest DNA on the planet. The Khoisan, they come from Southern Africa, right? And Khoisan come from Southern Africa, and they were here. The Khoisan were here before Native Americans come into existence. And one of the things we deal with in the class are archaeological discoveries. In the past few years, archaeological discoveries that took place. Well, back in 2004, Dr. Albert Goodyear, who is an archaeologist at the University of South Carolina, Dr. Albert Goodyear made a shocking discovery and found an African presence in Allendale County, South Carolina, dating back at least 51,700 years. We'll talk about that. But we deal with also the impact of the media. So this is a 12-hour, 6-week online course that I teach called Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We can't start our history in slavery, not even in this country, right? And we do, slideshow. We have video clips, references from books, a lot of information, articles. But if we just look at the consumption of media, right? In 2011, the State of the African American Consumer show that's put out by AC Nielsen Company, right? They stated that African American adults 18 to 49 years old watch 7.2 hours of the television a week. 7.2 hours of the television a week. That is that's 50 hours. That's 50 hours a week. 7.2 hours of TV a day. 50 hours a week. That's a full-time job plus 10 hours of overtime we don't get paid to do. And African-American children see this and pick up on this. African-American children watch almost 6 hours of TV a day, about 5 hours, 54 minutes of TV a day, 42 hours a week. And this is the number one way that these European white supremacist images are fed to us. There was a study from 2012 that came out. BlackAmericaWeb.com had an article about this. This deals with how TV kills Black boys' self-esteem. TV kills Black boys' self-esteem, as well as African-American girls. A new, precise, and exhaustive year-long study finds that watching television regularly distorts and ultimately destroys the self-esteem of young African-American males, who often find themselves comparing one another to the characters they view on air, leaving them feeling trapped and as if there are very few positive life paths they can aspire to. Very few positive life paths they can aspire to. Okay. And very quickly, before I forget, there's one other article I meant to get to. This article came out today. So early this morning, I saw a story coming from a TV station in Chicago. I think it was the ABC affiliate in Chicago, right? This dealt with how Donald Trump is sending in 20 additional federal officers to assist in solving murders, assist in curtailing crime in Chicago, right? So we know that he tweeted a few months ago, if they don't get things together in Chicago, he's going to send in the feds. Well, the feds are already there. I don't know if you knew that. But today at the White House press secretary daily briefing, right, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who just stands up there and tells lies all day long, because I watch the daily briefing usually each day. Sarah Huckabee Sanders was she was asked about the federal government's decision to send in an additional 20 agents from the ATF, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, into Chicago, and whether this was a tacit admission by the government that part of the problem in that city is related to the easy access to firearms. Now, a lot of the illegal firearms that come into Chicago come from Indiana, where Governor Mike Pence, or Vice President Mike Pence was governor. They come from Indiana. They don't want to talk about that, though, right? So Sarah Huckabee Sanders responded, and she said, I think that the problem there in Chicago is pretty clear that it's a crime problem. I think that crime is driven more by a morality than anything else. So I think that this is a law enforcement issue, and our focus is trying to add additional support. Okay. Now, she doesn't, when you have opioid addiction and you have white people dropping dead all across the country from heroin overdoses, right? She doesn't say that that's a morality issue. See, there's a consensus that we need to get resources to these people. West Virginia is ravaged. I was just reading a story today about West Virginia, and I've seen other stories about West Virginia. West Virginia is ravaged by opioid addiction, prescription drugs, and heroin. Okay, because opioid which comes from opium, is in the prescription drugs, the painkillers, and when they can't get any more painkillers, the prescription runs out, things like this, they turn to heroin, which has opium in it also. Okay, so when it comes to heroin addiction, opioid addiction, we want to get them, we want to reclassify that as a mental health issue and sorry, as a public health issue, right? And get them the treatment that they need, as opposed to looking at it as a criminal justice issue and saying we need to lock them up and throw away the key. Okay. And we know that the majority of the people getting hooked on heroin and overdose, and these are white people. Now, there is a percentage of African Americans who are getting hooked on heroin and opioids, things like this. Overwhelmingly is white people. Okay. So they're not calling that a morality issue. They're calling that a public health issue. When it comes to the crime in Chicago, which drastically comes out of a lack of opportunity and poverty and a perceived lack of opportunity. Now that's a morality issue. And instead of getting resources for after school programs, instead of getting resources for training programs, resources for more jobs, things like this, instead of bringing resources to Chicago, they want to bring in more law enforcement into Chicago. This is Sarah Huckabee Sanders, and this is the same way that this white supremacist Donald Trump thinks also, because that's what he is. Okay, so now her father is a white supremacist also. He thinks the same way, former Governor Huckabee as well. And this is a story from Raw Story. This is an article from rawstory.com from today. We posted it on our Facebook fan page here, the African History Network. Sarah Huckabee Sanders blames Chicago crime on a lack of morality. Sarah Huckabee Sanders blames Chicago crime on a lack of morality. Okay. And her father, in a statement in 2016, said that racial injustice in the U.S. is a sin problem, not a skin problem. A sin problem, not a skin problem. Before saying that all lives matter, whereas Black Lives, and he said the Black Lives Matter movement is elevating some lives above others. Now he had a show on Fox News. These are these right wing. See, you have to understand how dangerous right wing media is. Like Fox News is like really the home of white supremacy. Breitbart is also, but Fox News reaches more people than Breitbart. So just for those that don't know, Black Lives Matter is not saying that Black Lives Matter more than other people's lives. Black Lives Matter is saying that Black Lives Matter too, T-O-O, in addition to Black Lives Matter also. Because of the way oftentimes African Americans are treated by police, specifically criminal justice system, and generally, you couldn't tell that. So that's what this means. Okay, that just happened today with Sarah Huckabee Sanders. But once again, this ties into the articles dealing with the mistreatment of African American girls and boys, right? And looking at them as being older, looking at them as being more responsible for their actions, etc., as opposed to saying, wait a second, we need to get resources to these people to curtail the violence. No, we're going to send them more law enforcement. It's not resources they need, it's more law enforcement. And Donald Trump, he said when he ran for president, he said he wanted to be the law and order candidate. He said he was going to be the law and order president. And during the campaign, he said that police, he said the problem is not that police have too much authority. He felt that the police don't have enough authority. So I warned people about Donald Trump for months. You can go back and watch the videos, my audio podcasts, and my shows. I warned people about Donald Trump for months before the election. Okay, so I think we have this up. Yeah, we have this up here. All right, so If you look at this other article here, this is a study. This is a joint study by University of Pittsburgh and Harvard University. University of Pittsburgh and Harvard University. AfricanGlobe.net picked up this story. This was January 1st, 2013. This deals with how African-American teenagers with racial pride do better in school. African-American teenagers with racial pride do better in school. And this is one of the reasons why studying African history is so important. Okay, one of the reasons why studying African history is so important. So in the study, they found a new study by the University of Pittsburgh and Harvard University shows that when parents use racial socialization, such as talking to their children or engaging in activities that promote feelings of racial knowledge, pride, and connection, it offsets racial discrimination's potentially negative impact on students' academic development. It offsets racial discrimination's potentially negative impact on students' academic development. Okay. And we look at things like take them to African American History Month celebrations, take them to the African American Museum, Juneteenth celebrations, taking them to various lectures and exhibits, things like this, right? This builds a sense of racial pride, watching documentaries, etc. This builds a sense of racial pride and racial knowledge and connection, and this offsets discrimination's potentially negative impact on students' academic development. This was a joint study, came out 4 years ago from the University of Pittsburgh and Harvard University. Okay, so I deal with Lupita Nyong'o some. I talk about April 23rd. She was named People Magazine's most beautiful person. And she talked about how, because we deal with the concept of image. And she talked about how she wanted to be light-skinned when she was a child. She wanted to be light-skinned. She prayed to God each night that he made her light-skinned because she hated being dark-skinned. She grew up in Africa. She hated being dark-skinned because white supremacy is in Africa also, right? And we can see this with different African people in different African countries using skin bleaching cream, whether you're talking about Nigeria, South Africa, Ghana, etc. Okay, so I deal with that. I wrote an article about that also, about Lupita Nyong'o. All right, so let me fast forward through some of this, right? Okay, so we deal with Malcolm X. So this is Dr. David Imhotep, okay? He wrote the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. We use some of his information here in our class. I've interviewed him a number of times. He's not related to me. He's not my brother or anything like that, but he's a friend of mine. I've interviewed him a number of times. Okay. Okay, so it looks like we have a troll here. All right. Okay, so he wrote a book called The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence, right? And this deals with the African presence in North, Central, and South America, dating back at least 56,000 years ago in South America, 51,700 here, 51,700 years ago here in the U.S. And on page 14 of his book, he talks about the discovery by Dr. Albert Goodyear, 2004, Allendale County, South Carolina, right? And this is what they found in this discovery, okay? Dr. Albert Goodyear, who's an archaeologist at the University of South Carolina, they found artifacts, architecture, campsites, carvings, Egyptian writings, footprints in lava, genetic M174D haploid groups dealing with DNA and genetics, linguistics, paintings, skulls, skeletons, structures, and tools. 13 different disciplines thoroughly documenting an African presence in this country. 13 different disciplines thoroughly documenting an African presence in this country going back at least 51,700 years ago. Now, this is before the Clovis culture, which modern archaeology likes to say this was the first North American civilization, right? Going back 13,000 years ago in New Mexico. African people were here tens of thousands of years before that. We were here before Native Americans came into existence, because you're going to have Asians who come here around 3000 BC. They're going to intermix with the Africans who were already here, like the Khoisan. And Sarah Bartman was Khoisan, Sartej. Khoisan had the oldest DNA on the planet. They're the ancestors to the Ainu and the Twa. They go all around the world. But they're going to intermix with Asians, and their offspring are who we call Native Americans. Their offspring are who we call Native Americans. If you look at old pictures of Native Americans, old black and white photographs, these were dark-skinned people usually. Dark-skinned people, high cheekbones, things like this. These were not the light-skinned or almost white-looking Native Americans you see today. Okay. All right. Okay, now. Here is this is the article from ScienceDaily.com. ScienceDaily.com. This is from 2004. This is about Dr. Albert Goodyear's discovery. And the name of this article is "New Evidence Puts Man in North America 50,000 years ago." New evidence puts man in North America 50,000 years ago. Okay. And in the article, here's a synopsis of what it says: radiocarbon tests of carbonized plant remains, where artifacts were unearthed last May along the Savannah River in Allendale County by University of South Carolina archaeologist Dr. Albert Goodyear, indicate that the sediments containing these artifacts are at least 50,000 years old, meaning that humans inhabited North America long before the last ice age. Inhabited North America long before the last ice age. Okay. All right. So we deal with different archaeological discoveries like that. And we deal with things chronologically as much as possible. I deal with the discovery of the lost city of Egypt, Tanis Heracleion. I don't know how many people heard about this. This was in April 2013. This information came out. The lost city of Egypt. This sunk into the sea. This city sunk into the sea around 1200 years ago. Okay. And this city is believed to go back to about 8th century BC, the lost city of Tanis Heracleion. But at the bottom of Egypt's Bay of Abu Qir, they found this was an expedition that actually made this discovery in the year 2000, and they had to catalog everything, and they revealed their findings in 2013. But at the bottom of Egypt's Bay of Abu Qir, they found 64 ships, 16-foot tall statues. They found 16-foot tall statues of Offset or Isis, 700 anchors, countless gold coins, and smaller artifacts. All right. This was a huge discovery back in 2013. And I talked about this then when this discovery was made. Here's one of the statues they found at the bottom of the sea. Okay. This is of a Nesubiti or Pharaoh. This is 16-foot tall statue. This is one of the things they found. Okay. So these archaeological discoveries take place all the time. These archaeological discoveries happen all the time. All right. We just had one earlier this month coming out of Morocco. Skeletons of modern man, Homo sapiens, dating back 300,000, 350,000 years old. This was just discovered early this month in Morocco. All the news outlets had stories about this. And this predates by at least 100,000 years the oldest fossils of modern man that they had that came out of Ethiopia that dated back 195,000 years ago. Talking about Homo sapiens, not Lucy or Dinknesh. That's not modern man. That is a previous species. That's Australopithecus afarensis. I'm not talking about that. Okay, that dates back 3.2 million years old. So we deal with, ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt, things like this, right? We talk about the Moors, the Africans known as the Moors, who go into Europe, into the Iberian Peninsula, today known as Spain and Portugal, 711 AD. And they take into Europe science and mathematics and nautical instruments, and they take chemistry. They take something called alchemy, what used to be called alchemy, today called chemistry. They take in spherical globes and almanacs, they create libraries, they build libraries. They introduce a sanitation system, introduce different types of food preservation systems, different types of foods, new musical instruments. This is what the Moors take into Europe. And George G.M. James in Stolen Legacy said that the Moors were the custodians of the ancient Egyptian mystery system. So they're taking this knowledge into Europe, coming from ancient Kemet, coming from ancient Egypt. And you're going to see this knowledge, some of it eventually wind up into Freemasonry. Okay, the Freemasons. And Freemasonry is based upon ancient African principles coming out of ancient Egypt. So when we look at the Tekken, the Washington Monument, it's an ancient African symbol called a Tekken, which is a symbol of resurrection and transformation, coming from the story of Asar, Aset, and Heru, the first Holy Trinity, Asar, Aset, and Heru. Now, I know there may be some things that I say that are outside the circumference of some people's awareness. Just because you never heard them before does not mean that they are not true. This means you have to do some research to understand what I'm talking about. So when we look at something like the Washington Monument and we see Dr. King, the statue of Dr. King there, right? Washington Monument is an ancient African symbol called a Tekken. There were about 1,200 Tekkenu all throughout Kemet, all throughout Egypt. There are only about 12 there today. They've been taken to different cities, Istanbul, Turkey, and Vatican City, and Paris, France, things like this. Taken out of Egypt, taken out of Kemet, taken to different countries. Okay, but that's an ancient African symbol. The Greeks call it an obelisk. An obelisk. All right, so this is some of the type of information we do, and we talk about Freemasonry. We deal with religion and how religion impacts African Americans, and also was used during slavery. We deal with why Christmas was celebrated on December 25th, also because nowhere in the biblical text there's a state that Jesus the Christ was born on December 25th. Nowhere in the biblical text does it state that. So we deal with a lot of history. We deal with a chronology of history also. So we can see how a sequence of historical events lead up to another event taking place. And, Dr. Francis Cress Wilson and Nellie Fuller taught us, if you do not understand European white supremacy and racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you think that you understand will totally confuse you. Everything else that you think that you understand will totally confuse you. And racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race. Racism has nothing to do with not liking people, calling people racial epithets, racial slurs. That's bigotry. Racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race, coming out of the ideology of white supremacy. Racism occurs when one race of people control the majority of the wealth, power, resources, benefits, privileges, land, access to education, access to opportunity, and they use that to marginalize, subordinate, and do harm to another race of people. That's what racism is. If you can read my articles, if you go to AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, you can read my article, White Racism versus Black Racism. Most people are confused about what racism is. And there's a video I put together in there that explains all this historically. We deal with Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus is essential to understand the transatlantic slave trade, even though, this is one of my teachers, Dr. Leonard Jeffries. Dr. Jeffries talks about whoever controls the images controls the self-esteem, self-development, self-worth of the people. Whoever controls the history controls the vision. But Christopher Columbus is central to understand the transatlantic slave trade. We deal with things like the origins of the word America, the origins of the word Africa, problem with slave movies. There's a reason why there's a proliferation of slave movies. Okay. But Columbus on his 4 voyages, right? I explain to people, we have to stop lying to our children, telling them that Columbus discovered America. We have to stop doing that, because when you study where Columbus went, he never came to the land that we call the United States of America. He never came to the land that we call the United States of America. Okay. You look at his 4 voyages. His first voyage, he set sail August 3rd, 1492 on the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. He goes into San Salvador, what we call the Bahamas, Cuba, Hispaniola, what we call Haiti. His second voyage, he goes into Puerto Rico, Jamaica. He goes into the West Indies. Third voyage in 1498, Trinidad and Venezuela mainland and South America. fourth voyage, Panama and Honduras and Central America. Okay. When you study where he went on his 4 voyages, he never came to the land we call the United States of America. The closest he came here is Cuba, which is 90 miles away. And at least 70% of the people Columbus came in contact with on his 4 voyages were African people also. This is something that a lot of people don't know. We deal with this in the course because Dr. David Imhotep deals with this in his book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. Okay. So this is some of the type of information we deal with, and we build the first class, we use that to build a foundation so people to understand the subsequent classes and subsequent information we're going to deal with. Okay. But we can't look at the transatlantic slave trade as an episode in history, as I stated. We deal with the Middle Passage, all different types of things like this, right? We can't look at it as a episode in history. It is the culmination of a sequence of historical events that take place that have a domino effect that lead to it happening. We deal with things like, did Africans sell themselves into slavery? What, because that's a very complicated history there that a lot of people don't understand. Were African people in America before the slave trade? We deal with that as well. And African people were enslaved almost 100 years before August 20th, 1619 in Jamestown, Virginia. If you look at in South Carolina, the Spanish are taking Africans into South Carolina, going back to the 1520s. Okay. So we deal with shocking archaeological discoveries that are causing experts to have to rethink everything. Because when these archaeological discoveries come out, it causes them to have to rethink everything. They have to push dates back. They have to rethink everything. Okay. We deal with how the impact of insurance companies. Now, you have insurance companies. A lot of your early insurance companies either got their start or some of their early business was insuring slave ships and the Africans on those slave ships as well. Okay. And then also, a lot of people don't know, you had over 40 insurance companies in this country that sold insurance policies on slaves on the slave plantations. Because oftentimes the slave owners would take out insurance policies on slaves that had very dangerous jobs. They may work in sawmills, work in coal mines, different things like this, right? And there were at least 262 skills, trades, and crafts that African people had in this country from 1619 up into 1865. At least 262 skills, trades, and crafts. We were engineers, we were blacksmiths, coppersmiths, we were bartenders, barkeeps. We worked in coal mines, sawmills, all different types of jobs we had. Furniture makers, anchor makers, at least 262 skills, trades, and crafts. And some of these jobs were dangerous jobs we were doing. Okay. So you're going to have insurance companies that are going to make money taking out insurance policies, taking out insurance policies on enslaved African people. So these are just some of the things we deal with, and we deal with, the first holy trinity of Asar, Set, and Heru. The Greeks call him Osiris, Isis, and Horus. We deal with the links to ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt, and early Christianity. Also, we deal with the fake Willie Lynch letter of 1712. Because Willie Lynch never historically existed. We need to stop lying to our children and tell them about that nonsense. Willie Lynch never historically existed. Okay. This is a famous slave ship, the Lewiston, which sinks, and the captain, they're going to cash in the insurance policy, the Lewiston, 1738. Okay. All right. So we have a recommended reading list of books also at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We have a recommended reading list of books there. You can check that out also. So this is just a brief overview of our online course, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. So we're doing a session of this on Saturday, July 1st, 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. We're doing another installment of this. And if you all the sessions are recorded, so anything that you miss, you can go back and watch it over and over again, right? And so if you miss session number 1, as soon as you register, you'll be able to watch session number 1. You'll also be able to watch bonus content as well. Class is only $40. So the cup of the cost of 8 cups of Starbucks coffee. Class is only $40, right? That helps us to keep doing research, keep doing what we do, stay on the air, keep broadcasting, etc. Because this is a lot of work. It's a 12-hour, 6-week online course. Deal with thousands of years of history. And I am the one teaching it. I'm Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. I'm the owner of this Facebook fan page, the African History Network, as well. Okay, so if you have any questions, go ahead, and we posted a link. Everybody got it to register. Let's see. Erica, thank you, reminding people that the Willie Lynch letters are fake. Yeah, Willie Lynch never historically existed. There were words in the Willie Lynch letter that didn't even exist in the early 1800s. That was created by Dr. Kwabena Ashanti in 1970. He admitted it to try to show African Americans how they were acting like slaves, but I think it caused more harm than good. Let me scroll back. Look at some of your comments here. Okay, so much talking about Venus Williams. Yeah, now that actually happened June 9th. We just heard about it yesterday. Very interesting. Okay. I was trying to see if I can get some more of your comments here. All right. Okay, guys, look, I got to get out of here. Share this broadcast to your own Facebook page. Invite you. Thanks for listening. You can register for our online course also. And also visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. All of my DVD lectures are there. I have about 30 of my DVD lectures there also. We have bundle packs. We have documentaries there also, the Hidden Colors documentaries, a lot of information at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can read all of my articles there, listen to audio podcasts of my radio shows. We have 750 podcast episodes of our show there also at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Okay, look, I have to get out of here. Hey, remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. Because right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Okay, Erica asked, how's your baby? Oh, my daughter's fine. She's 4 months old. Daughter's fine. She's growing. She's going to be tall. I think she's going to be tall and very, very smart. Okay. All right. We'll talk to you all next time. Peace. See you all in class. Peace.